Today is Thursday, August 15th. What to know today about the stock market and why some experts say a recession could be coming. Plus, a breakthrough treatment for a serious disease. What happened in space that has some scientists stumped. And the latest way companies are working to fight those annoying robocalls. Then hang out after the news for Thing to Know Thursday's bonus interview, what you need to know about the billion-dollar industry of esports. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. A big drop on Wall Street and a sign that could mean a recession is near. The Dow fell around 800 points Wednesday, while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ also slipped. So here's what's going on. The Washington Post says this all has to do with the government bond market. Something weird happened this week. Returns on short-term U.S. bonds were actually better than long-term ones, meaning the government is now paying more to attract buyers to its 2-year bond than its 10-year note. The key point here is that usually it's the other way around. The Wall Street Journal reports the fact that it flip-flopped signals means investors are not confident in the economy, especially with the recent global trade tensions. People are taking note because when you look back at the last 50 years, it's happened before every recession, including the 2008 financial crisis. But perhaps this time is different. The AP says some believe this warning might not be as reliable as it has been before, because other factors may be skewing it, like lower bonds in Europe. Others think this is a sign the Federal Reserve needs to cut the short-term interest rates to encourage spending and give the economy a boost. That includes President Trump. He tweeted yesterday, quote, "The Fed is holding us back." Either way, experts say this doesn't necessarily mean it's time to start pulling your money out of the stock market, that instead we should just ride this out. Stay tuned. A scary situation in Philadelphia. At least 6 police officers were shot during a standoff that lasted nearly 8 hours overnight. CNN says police showed up to a Philadelphia neighborhood yesterday because of drug activity of some sort, and things went downhill from there. Fox News says at least one person apparently began shooting with an assault-style weapon, firing what sounded like at least 100 shots. The alleged shooter was still in a house and refused to come out. Eventually, a SWAT team had to rescue 2 police officers and 3 others. Now the suspect is in custody. The officers injured are also doing okay and have since been released from the hospital. Police said the fact that no officers were killed is, quote, nothing short of a miracle. A quick update now on the investigation into accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's apparent suicide. The New York Times cites sources who say the 2 guards who were supposed to be keeping an eye on Epstein the night he died fell asleep and didn't check on him for 3 hours. Then they're accused of lying about it in a report to cover it up. Both guards are now suspended, and the warden of the prison is reassigned. Remember, the well-connected multimillionaire was charged with sexually abusing teenage girls in a high-profile case, but Epstein was found dead in a New York jail cell on Saturday. And one more update. His alleged victims were worried they wouldn't get justice. So CNN reports one of his accusers is now suing Epstein's estate, his friend, and 3 others, saying they helped run and keep the sex trafficking ring quiet. There's more to come on this one. The FDA just okayed a new treatment for extreme cases of tuberculosis, the kind that is resistant to antibiotics. Reuters reports it's a big deal because it's only the 3rd new TB drug approved in nearly 50 years. Even while TB is the leading infectious disease threat in the world. The Washington Post reports a lot of for-profit drug companies have just stopped making new medicines for diseases like TB. The whole process can cost up to $1 billion, yet those drugs won't make the drug company as much money later, especially compared to treatments for more long-term diseases like high blood pressure. So it was actually a nonprofit that created this new TB treatment, and it should be available by the end of the year. Researchers hope this will lead the way for more drug development. The black hole at the center of our galaxy lit up twice as bright as ever before, and scientists aren't sure why. USA Today reports this particular black hole is the closest one to Earth. It's in the middle of the Milky Way and about 4 million times bigger than the Sun. It's called Sagittarius A. Well, scientists were using a very large telescope to observe the black hole earlier this year, and they saw what they called an unprecedented flash of light. In fact, CNET says it was brighter than anything ever produced by that black hole. Scientists aren't sure why this happened, but some have theories. They say it could have been caused by another star or gas cloud passing by. But either way, they don't think it's anything to worry about. They're keeping an eye on it in the hopes of eventually figuring out what really happened. All right, more news ahead, but first let's take a quick break for our sponsor today, Blinkist. We're all busy people, right? It can be hard to find the time to sit down and read or learn more about something. Well, Blinkist just made it faster and easier to do just that. Blinkist is the only app that takes the best key takeaways from thousands of nonfiction books and breaks them down for you into just 15 minutes. From self-help to business to history, and the massive library is always growing. 8 million people are already using Blinkist, including me. I love learning new things, so Blinkist lets me fast-track my way to more information and self-improvement, and even gives me the choice to either read or listen. And when you sign up, I highly recommend checking out Factfulness. I read it on Blinkist, and it quickly explains how our world is actually doing better than you might think. Other great and popular books include Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/news to start your free 7-day trial. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/news to start your free 7-day trial. Blinkist.com/news. Now, back to the news. If you're scared, Amazon's technology might be able to tell. Its facial recognition software just got an upgrade, so it can now identify more emotions when it scans your face. So it may be able to read if you're scared, happy, sad, angry, or confused. It's also supposed to be able to better identify your gender and what age bracket you might be in. But there's still plenty of criticism when it comes to any facial recognition tech, especially because some police departments use Amazon software. Civil rights groups say it's used without other people's permission. And it can further gender and racial biases, since studies have shown the tech is not as accurate on women and people of color. But Amazon says this update is supposed to be improving those problems. WeWork is planning on going public. TechCrunch says the shared workspace company plans to raise $1 billion in what is likely a placeholder amount. Some say the actual offering amount may be 3 times bigger than that. This could be the second largest offering of the year behind Uber, which was valued at more than $82 billion after its May IPO. But it's not all good news for the company. WeWork has dealt with some big losses, especially last year. Still, the company plans to open co-working spaces in an additional 169 locations and wants to reach more than 250 million people across hundreds of cities. AT&T and T-Mobile want to work together to help fight those annoying robocalls. CNET says the two wireless companies are rolling out a system that works across both of their networks in an effort to fight the fraud. So this means if you have T-Mobile and an AT&T phone number calls you, your cell provider will be able to let you know if the call is real or fake. Engadget says the service will not actually block the calls, but it will give you a better idea of who might be calling. It's available now on some T-Mobile and AT&T phones. JayZ and the NFL are teaming up. The National Football League signed a multi-year deal with Rock Nation. That's Jay-Z's entertainment company. His company will be the NFL's, quote, live music entertainment strategist. The NFL says Rock Nation and JayZ will help with picking artists for major NFL performances, like the Super Bowl. Mostly, JayZ will work with the league's Inspired Change initiative, which helps create positive change in communities. The New York Times reports it donates money to criminal justice reform, employment and educational opportunities, and low-income areas. This partnership is quite the change since JayZ has turned down even performing at the Super Bowl in the past, and other stars like Rihanna followed suit. They weren't happy with how the NFL treated players over protests before games. But now it seems the NFL is responding to those concerns by hiring Rock Nation, and the league says it's excited to make more of a difference in communities. And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know only on Thursdays after the news. Today, we're talking about esports, which is set to become a billion-dollar industry this year. It's growing quickly and now even making its way into mainstream media and colleges and high schools. Here to help break it all down is my guest today, Joey Gariziak. He's the director of esports and sport management at Shenandoah University in Virginia, where they have one of the first esports majors in the country. He's also one of the authors of the first dedicated esports textbook. So here's my conversation with Joey Gariziak. Hi, Joey. Thanks so much for coming on The Newsworthy.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So I think there's still quite a few people that don't really know fully what esports is and what's Fortnite, which we hear about a lot too. So let's start there. Can you explain esports and Fortnite?
Simply put, esports is competitive video games. And so when you think about video gaming in general, a lot of times we don't think about it as playing against other teams or other people in a competitive atmosphere. But what we've seen lately is that a lot of games have come out where people are actually competing against each other, sometimes in teams, sometimes individually. And that's what esports is. It's just competitive gaming. And there's a lot of different games, a lot of different genres that kind of fall under that really broad category. And we're seeing it at the pro level, the college level, and the high school level, all over the place. So it's really become very popular very quickly, especially with, as you mentioned, this game called Fortnite, which has been like a global phenomenon for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now. And Fortnite being one of those games that is a competitive video game where people are playing against each other to try to eliminate each other, to be the last person standing, kind of like a Hunger Games type of video game. And what we just saw recently was this 16-year-old from Pennsylvania won $3 million by being the best Fortnite player in the world this year.
And so there are people who like to watch these professional players play each other, and they're just watching the game.
Yeah, absolutely. People love to watch other people playing video games. And it's usually through a streaming service called Twitch. Sometimes YouTube, Facebook Live also has some streaming platforms. But Twitch is the most popular one right now. But people love it. They love seeing people play the games that they also play at a really high level, which is, honestly similar to traditional sports.
And firsthand, colleges and even high schools are starting to incorporate esports. So what does that look like today?
Yeah, it looks like something I never thought would happen, to be honest. So I competed when I was in college at the University of Georgia back in the early 2000s, and it was for a case of energy drinks, I think was the grand prize. And like I mentioned, this guy just won $3 million. Because what we see is that at the college level for esports, we have it as not just a club kind of sport anymore. We have it as actually a varsity competitive activity in over 150 schools around the country and, to be honest, around the world. There are coaches. There are arenas and practice facilities. They are sanctioned competitions for teams to compete in different conferences and in different regions. It's using school money, using school logos and colors. So it's just like a university would have a baseball, basketball, football team. Now a lot of universities have an esports team. And that's why kind of naturally we've seen the trickle-down effect into high schools now.
So what do you think has changed in recent years to make this more mainstream? Why now?
Technology has changed, and also just attitude has changed. I think it's just kind of taken some time for the general population to kind of catch on to what's happening right now in esports. It's more accessible than it ever has been because of, like I mentioned, Twitch, and more money is flowing into the ecosystem that is the esports industry. And so when more money is flowing, more people pay attention to it, and it's covered by larger media outlets like ESPN, ABC, Disney, which increases that growth and increases that excitement and attachment to it, which increases the revenue and the money that's being driven into the industry. Some people are still a little resistant to esports, and I totally get it, but esports is here. Video games are here. Kids are playing them at a clip that they aren't doing any other activity in the world. And so they're here and they're here to stay. So the best thing we can do is kind of embrace what's happening, use it as an educational opportunity instead of trying to fight it and say, no, my kid will never play video games. They shouldn't play esports. That's terrible. Only go outside. My thing is all things in moderation.
What do you say about the violent aspect of video games?
Sure. No, that's a great question. It's something that, is better talked about than kind of swept aside. I understand that there is violence inherent in some of these games. There's also violence inherent in hockey and in football. So violence is part of a lot of these games. Now, to the point of violence in games, a lot of times what we get is shooting and killing in video games. And so, yes, that is something that is kind of a byproduct of what we have in esports, but it's not for every game. Not every game is what we call a first-person shooter. There are plenty of games that have no gore, no blood, no killing, no guns involved in it at all. And really what it is, I want parents to give it a chance. Play the games yourselves. See if you think this is something that your child should or should not do, because end of the day, it's the parents that should make that decision and make that call. That's really important that parents have a conversation with their kids.
Do high schools, are they specific about what games they allow?
They're very specific about the games they allow, and for the right reasons. I mean, colleges here at Shenandoah, I'm the same way in that we don't play some of the more war simulation games like a Call of Duty, like a Counter-Strike Global Offensive, a Rainbow Six Siege. We do play a game Overwatch that is a first-person shooter, but it's fantasy-based where people are casting spells to eliminate other players, but not using guns necessarily. Same thing with high schools. They're very intentional about the games that they are allowing their kids to play at the state level and at the school level.
You mentioned some of the money. coming into the industry now? What do the professional teams look like?
What we consider modern day esports has been around for, let's call it almost a decade at this point. And it's really grown exponentially for the past 5 years or so with money in the industry. As more people are paying attention, there's more sponsorship opportunities in the industry. And that's a lot of where the money is coming from, is on these media opportunities and sponsorship opportunities. And we're still continuing to see this exponential growth year after year to where it is now as a billion-dollar industry. And what we've started to see recently are some games and organizers are actually starting city-based teams where your team is located in a certain city, which creates a new attachment for fans.
How many professional teams are there, and what do the players make?
Oh gosh. So let's stick with one league. So I'll give you an example. The Overwatch League, the one I research and the one personally I play the most. There are 20 professional teams based in cities around the world, and those players are guaranteed a minimum salary of $50,000 a year. Now, that being said, there's a lot of other kind of incentives in there where if they win one of their stages during the year or win the championship at the end of the year, there's additional money that they can win, but their base salary is at $50,000 a year plus retirement plus health benefits.
Is there anything else about esports and what people might not know about it that you want to add?
Here at Shenandoah University, we have not just a competitive varsity team that competes against schools around the country, have an esports major to teach our students how to work in the esports industry, because that's one thing that really isn't there right now, is that this is a billion-dollar industry without people that have been trained or get a degree in esports to understand how the industry works and how to further it and get a career in a field that continues to grow exponentially with lots of money in it, lots of job opportunities, and something that students really love doing it and are highly passionate about.
And you can read more about our guest and this topic in today's show notes. Just go to thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and look for today's date. That's also where you'll find all the sources and links to stories we mentioned. Thank you so much for listening. The Newsworthy is here for you by 4 in the morning every weekday. We'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.